Chapter 1. The Proposal That Shook Two Kingdoms. The Gusu Empire did not ask. It commanded. White banners with golden cloud patterns moved across the border like silent waves. The imperial envoys did not shout, did not threaten, did not negotiate loudly. They simply arrived. And when Gusu arrived, the world listened. In Yunmeng Kingdom, however, something very different was happening. Your Highness, please stop hanging from the roof. A red-robed figure was lying flat on the palace rooftop, staring at the sky. Prince Wei Wuxian, second Prince of Yunmeng. Official title, Carefree Royal. Real identity, Dangerous Genius. Hidden identity, Omega. He rolled over lazily and waved at the terrified servants below. I'm calculating wind direction. By lying on the roof? Yes. Why? In case we are invaded. The servants nearly cried. Wei Wuxian wasn't joking. While other princes practiced poetry and diplomacy, he studied military formations, engineering, hidden weapons, supply chain logistics, spy communication codes. He once redesigned Yunmeng's flood irrigation system in 3 days. He once exposed a corrupt minister by pretending to be drunk for an entire month. He once built a mechanical folding crossbow that could fire 3 arrows at once. But the world thought he was just playful. And he preferred it that way. Inside the royal throne hall, tension filled the air. The Yunmeng king sat stiffly. In front of him stood the envoy of Gusu. White robes, silver belt, calm expression. He spoke clearly. The emperor of Gusu, Lan Wangji, proposes a marriage alliance. The ministers whispered immediately. Lan Wanzi, also known as Lanza in foreign lands. The Ice Emperor. Alpha of the purest bloodline. Never seen smiling. Never rumored to have a lover. Never accepted any marriage proposal. The king swallowed. To whom? The envoy did not hesitate. To Prince Wei Wuxian. Silence. Complete silence. A teacup dropped somewhere in the hall. Moment latte. Wei Wuxian walked in chewing lotus seeds. Why is everyone pale? Did someone die? His brother glared at him. Wuxian. Stand properly. Wei Wuxian bowed lazily. The king spoke carefully. The emperor of Gusu has requested your hand in marriage. Wei Wuxian blinked. Imine. Yes. Specifically. Yes. Wei Wuxian stopped smiling for exactly 2 seconds. Then the smile returned. Oh, the envoy added calmly. Our emperor has one condition. The ministers held their breath. He will take no other consort. The entire hall gasped. Even Wei Wuxian paused mid-chew. No other marriage? The king repeated. Yes. The empress will be the only spouse. No secondary marriage. No concubines. For an emperor. That was shocking. That was dangerous. That was personal. Wei Wuxian tilted his head. Does your emperor know I am not gentle? The envoy's lips almost twitched. Our emperor has studied your achievements carefully. The ministers froze. Studied? Wei Wuxian's eyes sharpened slightly. Interesting. Very interesting. Later that evening, by the Lotus Lake, Wei Wuxian sat with his elder brother. You don't have to go, his brother said quietly. Wei Wuxian skipped a stone across the water. I know. You would live in another empire. Far away. I know. Gusu is powerful. I know. Lan Wangji is an alpha. Wei Wuxian laughed softly. Good. His brother frowned. You're not afraid? Wei Wuxian leaned back. If he investigated me carefully enough to request me specifically. His eyes sparkled. Then I want to see what kind of emperor he is. And if he didn't investigate carefully? Wei Wuxian smiled slowly. Then he's about to be surprised. Meanwhile, Gusu Imperial Palace. Lan Wangji stood alone before a large war map. Reports were stacked neatly beside him. A general spoke carefully. Your Majesty, many kingdoms offered princesses. Why choose Yunmeng's second prince? Lan Wangji did not look up. Because he is intelligent. The general blinked. He restructured flood control at 16. He solved grain shortages without raising taxes. He exposed corruption using disguise. He redesigned border defense anonymously. The general swallowed. You admire him. Lan Wangji's voice remained calm. I value him. A pause. He will be my only empress. The general nearly lost balance. Only. No second marriage. No political backup bride. Just one. Backing Yunmeng. Wei Wuxian stood before the throne the next morning. The king asked carefully, Your decision? Wei Wuxian smiled brightly. I accept. Gasps filled the hall. His brother whispered, Are you serious? Wei Wuxian winked. If I'm going to marry, might as well marry the strongest emperor. Then he added lightly, And I'm curious how cold he really is. The engagement gifts arrived within days. Silk, gold, rare books. But what surprised Wei Wuxian most was a box of advanced military strategy manuscripts, with a small note, for discussion. No romantic poem. No sweet words. Just intellectual respect. Wei Wuxian laughed. Oh, this emperor is interesting. As the wedding date approached, whispers spread. The Ice Emperor is marrying. He promised only one spouse. He chose an Omega Prince. He personally ordered palace reconstruction for him. And in the north, war rumors began to stir. Foreign troops gathering. Border tensions rising. A storm was coming. Marriage alliance. Power balance shifting. And in the center of it all, a genius Omega Prince walking calmly into the lion's den. Not as prey, but as equal. On the morning of departure, Wei Wuxian stood in red wedding robes. His brother hugged him briefly. Be careful. Wei Wuxian grinned. I always am. As the carriage began moving toward Gusu, he looked ahead calmly. Empezo Lan Wanzi. He murmured softly. Let's see which one of us is more dangerous. Chapter 2. The Wedding of Ice and Fire. The capital of Gusu had never been this decorated. White silk banners flowed like clouds across the palace gates. Golden lanterns lined the main road. Citizens stood in neat rows, whispering excitedly. The emperor is truly marrying. And he promised no other consort. They say the Yunmeng prince is very clever. They say he's trouble. Inside the imperial palace courtyard, Lan Wangji stood in formal wedding robes. White layered silk, gold embroidery, crown of polished jade, perfect posture, cold expression, unshakable. If not for the slight tightening of his fingers inside his sleeves. He had waited for this day calmly, but not carelessly. The wedding carriage arrived. Red curtains lifted slightly as Wei Wuxian stepped down. He wore bright red robes embroidered with lotus and cloud patterns, symbol of both kingdoms united. His long black hair was tied loosely with a golden crown. He looked relaxed. Too relaxed. His eyes scanned everything in seconds. Guard positions. Archer towers. Escape routes. Minister reactions. Then his gaze met Lan Wangji's. Ah. So this is the Ice Emperor. Tall. Composed. Unbelievably handsome. And staring directly at him without hesitation. Wei Wuxian smiled slowly. Lan Wangji stepped forward personally. Gasps echoed. The emperor rarely moved for anyone. He stopped before Wei Wuxian. His voice was low and steady. Welcome to Gusu. Wei Wuxian tilted his head slightly. Your Majesty greets me personally? I'm honored. I should. A simple answer. No extra words. But clear. The ceremony was grand but efficient. Bows exchanged. Heaven and earth witnessed. Tea offered to ancestors. No dramatic speeches. No forced emotions. Just steady respect. When it was time to walk into the palace together, Lan Wangji quietly extended his hand. Not commanding. Not pulling. Simply offering. Wei Wuxian looked at it for 1 second. Then placed his hand in his. Warm. Firm. Steady. Interesting. Inside the Empress Palace, Wei Wuxian expected heavy incense. Over-decorated rooms. Formal distance. Instead, the room was elegant and simple. Fresh air. Lotus flowers. A desk prepared with maps and strategy scrolls. He blinked. Lan Wanzi spoke calmly. You prefer light fragrance. Strong incense gives you headaches. Wei Wuxian slowly turned. You investigated even that? Yes. No scam. No apology. Just truth. Wei Wuxian laughed. Should I be flattered or worried? You may choose. That made him laugh louder. When servants left, silence settled. This was the moment most people feared. The wedding night. But Lan Wangji did not rush forward. Instead, he poured tea, placed a cup before Wei Wuxian. Long journey. Wei Wuxian studied him carefully. You're not what rumors say. Lan Wangji sat across from him. Rumors are inaccurate. So you're not cold? I am. Pause. Not toward you. Wei Wuxian's fingers paused on the teacup. Direct. No hesitation. He leaned forward slightly. You don't even know me well. Lan Wangji met his gaze steadily. I know enough. What do you know? That you pretend to be careless. That you analyze everything. That you dislike being underestimated. Wei Wuxian blinked. You're dangerous. Lan Wangji's voice softened slightly. Only for enemies. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed outside. Wei Wuxian stood instantly. Lan Wangji was already at the door. Guards rushed in. Your Majesty. A minister's carriage overturned near the south gate. Wei Wuxian raised an eyebrow. On our wedding night? Lan Wangji's eyes turned sharp. Yes. They exchanged a glance. Both understood. Suspicious timing. Wei Wuxian walked to the window casually. If I were testing a new empress. He smiled slightly. I'd create a small disturbance to see his reaction. Lan Wangji looked at him. And your reaction? Wei Wuxian shrugged. I'd wait. Real enemies don't act so obviously. Lan Wangji gave a slight nod. Agreed. He turned to the guards. Investigate quietly. No public punishment yet. The guards left. Wei Wuxian leaned against the table. So you won't overreact. No. And you won't suspect me? Lan Wangji's answer was immediate. No. Wei Wuxian blinked. No. I chose you. Simple. Unshaken trust. That was more dangerous than suspicion. Later that night, Lan Wangji adjusted the bedding carefully. You should rest. Wei Wuxian smirked. Are you always this proper? Yes. And if I misbehave? Lan Wangji stippet lo. Then I will handle it. The tone was calm, but slightly deeper. Wei Wuxian raised both hands playfully. All right, Your Majesty. I surrender. Lan Wangji's lips almost curved. Almost. As candles dimmed, Wei Wuxian lay beside him. No cuernis. No pressure. Just steady warmth. He spoke softly into the darkness. You truly won't take another spouse? No. Even for politics? No. Even if I cause trouble? You will. Wei Wuxian laughed quietly. And Lan Wangji turned slightly toward him. I will still choose you. Silence. Comfortable. Steady. Wei Wuxian closed his eyes. Perhaps this alliance would be interesting. Outside the palace walls, northern armies were quietly moving. Ministers were whispering. Spies were watching. Va clouds gathering. But inside the imperial chamber, the Ice Emperor lay awake for a moment longer, listening to his Omega's calm breathing. Then he allowed himself one quiet thought. Mine. Chapter 3, The Court Tests the Empress. The next morning, the imperial court was full. Too full. Ministers who usually pretended to be ill were suddenly very healthy. Officials who rarely attended were standing in perfect rows. Everyone wanted to see him. The Omega Prince who became the only empress. The one the Ice Emperor personally chose. Wei Wuxian Wan Ge Besai Lan Wanzi Gan Li. White and red formal robes flowed behind him. His expression? Pleasant. Relaxed. Almost bored. But inside, he was counting. 37 senior officials. 5 military commanders. 3 ministers avoiding eye contact. 2 who were staring too boldly. Interesting. The court session began. Lan Wangji sat on the dragon throne. Wei Wuxian's seat was placed beside him. Not lower. Beside. That alone caused whispers. A senior minister stepped forward first. Your Majesty. Regarding the northern border tension. His eyes briefly shifted to Wei Wuxian. Perhaps this matter should be discussed privately. Translation. The Empress should not interfere. Wei Wuxian smiled slightly. Lan Wangji's voice was calm. The Empress stays. No hesitation. The minister stiffened. Yes, Your Majesty. Maps were brought forward. Reports of troop movements from the Northern Coalition. Supply delays. Unstable weather conditions. Wei Wuxian watched quietly. One commander spoke confidently. If they attack, we simply reinforce the main gate and respond directly. Wei Wuxian tilted his head slightly. Direct response? Inefficient. But he stayed silent. For now. Another minister suddenly spoke. Your Majesty, forgive this humble servant, but can the Empress understand military matters? The hall froze. Very bold. Wei Wuxian blinked slowly. Lan Wangji's eyes turned cold. But before he could speak, Wei Wuxian raised his hand gently. May I? Lan Wangji looked at him. Yes. One word. Full trust. Wei Wuxian stood. Walked to the map. He studied it for 3 seconds. Then, he moved 3 small wooden markers. If the Northern Coalition attacks, they will not strike the main gate. The generals frowned. Why not? Because it's obvious. He pointed calmly. Their supply line runs along this river. If they engage directly, they expose their weaker eastern flank. He moved another marker. They'll send a smaller force here first. A distraction. Murmurs spread. One commander objected. That is speculation. Wei Wuxian smiled pleasantly. Yes. He pulled out a small folded document from his sleeve. Which is why I sent scouts yesterday. The entire court froze. You what? Wei Wuxian handed the report to Lan Wangji. River depth measurements. It dropped 2 feet. Enough for rapid crossing. Lan Wangji read quickly. His eyes sharpened slightly. Accurate. Completely accurate. Wei Wuxian turned back to the generals. If we reinforce the main gate as suggested, we lose the eastern farmland within 3 days. Silence. Heavy silence. Then Lan Wangji spoke calmly. Adjust the formation according to the Empress's analysis. No debate. Immediate order. The generals bowed. Yes, Your Majesty. The bold minister from earlier swallowed. Wei Wuxian looked at him sweetly. Minister Lu, you asked if I understand military matters. A polite smile. Do you still doubt? The minister hurriedly bowed. This servant was blind. Wei Wuxian waved lazily. It happens. After court ended, Lan Wangji walked beside him through the palace corridor. You sent scouts without informing me. Wei Wuxian grinned. Would you have stopped me? No. Then why inform you? Lan Wangji almost smiled. Almost. You were correct. Wei Wuxian looked pleased. Of course. Suddenly, a palace maid rushed forward nervously. Your Majesty. The western storage tower caught fire. Lan Wangji's expression turned sharp. Wei Wuxian's eyes narrowed. Fire. On the same day as military tension? Suspicious. They arrived quickly. Smoke rising. Guards panicking. Wei Wuxian observed quietly. Too controlled. Too contained. He walked toward the side entrance. Lan Wangji followed without question. Inside, he pointed at a stack of oil jars. Placed too neatly. Lan Wangji understood instantly. Deliberate. Wei Wuxian nodded. A distraction. Someone wants us focused inside the palace. Lan Wangji's gaze hardened. Investigate all Western officials. Wei Wuxian tilted his head. No. Lan Wangji looked at him. No. Too obvious again. He crouched slightly near a footprint. Small boots. Not military. He stood. Palace servant. Lan Wangji's voice lowered dangerously. Internal sabotage. Wei Wuxian smiled faintly. Congratulations, Your Majesty. For marrying someone useful? Yes. By evening, the culprit was found. A bribed kitchen assistant connected to northern spies. Court ministers were shaken. The Empress discovered it before the guards did. Rumors began spreading fast. The Empress predicted the attack. He exposed sabotage. He moved scouts without fear. The Emperor trusts him completely. That night, Wei Wuxian leaned back in his chamber. Lan Wangji entered quietly. You handled court well. Wei Wuxian smirked. You handled it better. Lanwanzi stipet gelo. Are you tired? No. Pause. Are you impressed? Yes. Wei Wuxian blinked. You admit it so easily? Lan Wangji looked at him steadily. You are my empress. As expected. Direct praise. No embarrassment. Wei Wuxian felt strangely warm. He quickly covered it with a grin. Careful. If you keep praising me, I might become arrogant. Lan Wangji's voice softened. You already are. Wei Wuxian laughed loudly. Later. As they stood by the window overlooking the capital, Wei Wuxian spoke quietly. War is coming. Yes. You'll go personally. Yes. He didn't hesitate. Wei Wuxian crossed his arms. Then I'll manage here. Lan Wangji turned toward him. I trust you. 3 simple words. No emotional drama. No heavy atmosphere. Just fact. Wei Wuxian smiled slowly. Good. Because I don't plan to sit quietly. Lan Wanzi stipet gelo. I know. And for the first time, his hand gently rested at Wei Wuxian's waist. Not possessive. Not demanding. Just steady. Only for him. Outside. Storm clouds gathered over the northern mountains. Inside. The Empire's most powerful Alpha and most dangerous Omega stood side by side. Equal. Moonlight. The palace was too quiet. Wei Wuxian noticed it first. Not because of sound, but because of pattern. Guards rotated normally. Lanterns burned steadily. Servants walked properly. Everything looked correct. Too correct. He stood on the balcony of the Empress Palace, watching the moon reflect on the lake. Behind him, Lan Wangji reviewed military reports. Northern armies were moving faster than expected. Wei Wuxian tapped the railing lightly. Your Majesty. Lan Wangji looked up immediately. Yes. Tonight feels organized. A small pause. Lan Wanzi understo instanti. Too organized. Wei Wuxian smiled. Exactly. Midnight. A soft metallic sound. Barely audible. But Wei Wuxian's eyes opened instantly. Lan Wangji was already awake. They did not speak. Did not panic. Just listened. A shadow moved across the courtyard roof. Fast. Silent. Professional. Lan Wangji reached for his sword. Wei Wuxian caught his wrist lightly. Wait. Lan Wanzi pauset? Wei Wuxian whispered calmly. If he wanted you dead, he would not enter through the outer courtyard. Lan Wangji's gaze sharpened. You are the target. Wei Wuxian smiled slightly. Most likely. The window slid open silently. A masked assassin entered. Light. Precise. Blade aimed directly at Wei Wuxian's position on the bed. But the bed was empty. The assassin froze. Too late. Wei Wuxian dropped from above, landing behind him. You should always confirm your target. The assassin spun. Lan Wangji's sword blocked instantly. Metal clashed softly. 3 moves exchanged. The assassin was skilled. Very skilled. He threw a smoke pellet. The room filled with gray mist. But Wei Wuxian laughed softly. Smoke indoors? Poor planning. He kicked a hidden lever near the wall. Windows opened automatically. Airflow cleared the room. Lan Wangji disarmed the assassin in one precise strike. The blade fell. Guards rushed in. The assassin bit down. Poison. Dead within seconds. Silence returned. Wei Wuxian crouched beside the body. He examined the fabric. Not northern style. Lan Wanzi not dead? Internal faction. Wei Wuxian pointed to the stitching. Western province. Lan Wangji's expression turned cold. Governor Qin. Possibly. Wei Wuxian stood calmly. They wanted to test something. Lan Wangji looked at him. Test what? Wei Wuxian smiled faintly. How much you value me? Silence. Lan Wanzi stipet gelo. They already know. Wei Wuxian blinked. Oh. Lan Wangji's voice was steady but lower. You are not a weakness. You are my decision. Direct. Clear. No hesitation. Wei Wuxian felt that strange warmth again. Annoying. He covered it with humor. Well, Your Majesty, at least assassins think I'm important. You are. Morning court. The assassination attempt was announced publicly. Lan Wangji stood before the court. His presence was icy. The empress was attacked. The entire hall froze. Wei Wuxian stood beside him calmly. A minister nervously spoke. Your Majesty, perhaps security should increase around the emperor instead. Lan Wangji's gaze turned sharp. The empress's safety equals mine. Silence. Absolute. Wei Wuxian added lightly. If anyone else wishes to try, please schedule properly. Midnight is inconvenient. A few younger officials almost choked trying not to laugh. Even some generals hid smiles. Lan Wangji's lips moved slightly. Almost a smile. Almost. Later, private chamber. Lan Wangji cleaned his sword slowly. You predicted the attempt. Wei Wuxian leaned against the table. I predicted a move. You placed the airflow mechanism beforehand. Yes. Lan Wangji looked at him directly. You prepared the room as a trap. Wei Wuxian grinned. Marriage into a foreign empire without preparation would be foolish. Lan Wanzi stipetko lo. You do not need to fight alone. Wei Wuxian raised an eyebrow. Are you offering protection? Yes. Simple. Firm. No ego. Wei Wuxian studied him carefully. You're not angry I interfered? No. You're not offended I handled the assassin? No. Why? Lan Wangji answered immediately. You are capable. Pause. And I like that. Wei Wuxian stared at him for a second, then laughed softly. You really are different from rumors. Lan Wangji's hand gently adjusted Wei Wuxian's sleeve. Rumors do not matter. Only him. Evening, Strategy Hall. Investigation results arrived. Governor Qin of the Western Province had secret communications with foreign merchants. Bribes traced. Movements suspicious. Wei Wuxian analyzed the letters quickly. He won't confess. Lan Wanzi not dead? He doesn't need to. Orders were sent. Governor Qin was arrested by dawn. No chaos. No public drama. Clean. Precise. Like everything Lan Wangji did. That night, Wei Wuxian stood by the window again. Lan Wanzi aplochek qui eli. You should rest. Wei Wuxian smiled faintly. War is near. Yes. And now internal factions move. Yes. Wei Wuxian turned to him. You will leave for the battlefield soon. Lan Wangji did not deny it. Yes. Silence lingered. Not emotional. Not heavy. Just realistic. Wei Wuxian crossed his arms. Good. Lan Wangji blinked once. Good. Yes. You're strongest at the front. Lan Wanzi stipetko lo. And you? Wei Wuxian smiled slowly. I'm strongest where people underestimate me. Lan Wangji's hand gently rested at his waist again. Warm. Steady. Then we divide the battlefield. Wei Wuxian nodded. Deal. Outside. The moon hid behind clouds. War drums echoed faintly from distant borders. The empire was about to split into two battlefields. One led by the Ice Emperor. One guarded by the genius Omega. And neither side would fall. Chapter 5. When the Emperor rides to war. The war drums began at dawn. Deep. Steady. Unavoidable. Northern coalition troops had officially crossed the river border. Scouts confirmed it. This was no longer tension. It was war. Inside the Imperial Strategy Hall, generals stood in full armor. Maps covered the table. Lan Wangji gave orders calmly. 3rd Battalion moves east. Reinforce river line. Cut supply access at Mountain Pass. Every command was precise. No hesitation. No raised voice. This was why he was feared. Wei Wuxian stood beside him in formal robes, quietly observing. When the final order was given, Lan Wangji dismissed everyone except him. Silence settled. You will leave tomorrow, Wei Wuxian said first. Yes. 3 main divisions? Yes. Eastern flank reinforced? Yes. Wei Wuxian nodded. Good. No dramatic gudvie. No fragile emotions. Just confirmation. That night, the palace courtyard was filled with soldiers preparing to depart. Armor shining under torchlight. Horses restless. Wei Wuxian walked slowly among them. He adjusted a saddle here. corrected a formation there. One young soldier whispered nervously, "The Empress understands military things?" Wei Wuxian smiled lightly. "Enough." At sunrise, Lan Wangji mounted his white war horse. The entire capital gathered to witness the departure. Lan Wangji looked untouchable in silver armor. Cold. Unshakable. The Ice Emperor. Wei Wuxian walked forward personally. Gasps spread through the crowd. Empresses usually watched from balconies. Wei Wuxian stood directly before the army. He tied a red ribbon around Lan Wangji's wrist. "For luck," a general whispered. Wei Wuxian shook his head. "For reminder." Lan Wangji looked at him. "Reminder?" Wei Wuxian's smile was calm. "You promised to return." Lan Wangji answered without pause. "I will." No dramatic bow. Just certainty. Before riding off, Lan Wangji leaned slightly closer. "Command the capital." Wei Wuxian raised an eyebrow. "You trust me with the throne?" "Yes." Simple. Absolute trust. Wei Wuxian's voice lowered slightly. "Win quickly." Lan Wangji nodded once. "For you." Then, the army moved. Dust rose behind thousands of soldiers. War banners disappeared into the northern horizon, and the capital felt suddenly quieter, but not weaker. Inside the palace, ministers immediately began whispering, "The emperor is gone. The empress is young. Now is the moment." They stopped when Wei Wuxian entered the hall. He was smiling, which made it worse. Emergency court session began. Reports flooded in. Northern coalition troops split into two forces, one aiming at the eastern farmland, the other attempting mountain encirclement. Wei Wuxian listened calmly, then moved the markers. "They want to trap His Majesty between river and mountain." A general frowned. "Should we send reinforcements?" Wei Wuxian shook his head. "No." Shock spread. "No. If we send reinforcements, they'll assume the capital is weakened." He pointed at the map. "Instead, release false supply information." The ministers blinked. "False?" "Yes. Leak that the capital grain reserves are low." One minister gasped. "But that shows weakness." Wei Wuxian smiled slowly. "Exactly." 3 days later, northern spies carried fake information back. The coalition shifted troops toward what they thought was a vulnerable capital, and walked straight into a controlled defensive trap Wei Wuxian had prepared quietly. Hidden archers. Fortified riverbanks. Preset barricades. No chaos. Just controlled response. On the battlefield, Lan Wangji received news. "Your Majesty, the capital repelled the diversion force." Lan Wangji did not look surprised. He handled it. The general nodded. "Yes, Your Majesty." Lan Wangji's lips almost curved slightly. Almost. Back in the capital, another issue rose. Western nobles began delaying tax shipments. Testing authority. Wei Wuxian invited them to the palace. They entered confidently. "The emperor is away," one noble began carefully. Wei Wuxian interrupted gently. "Yes." The noble smiled thinly. "Perhaps taxation can be reconsidered." Wei Wuxian clapped once. Guards brought in sealed evidence. Letters. Bribes. Illegal trade agreements. Silence fell instantly. Wei Wuxian tilted his head. "Shall we reconsider taxation publicly?" The nobles turned pale. "No, Your Majesty." "Good." Problem solved. Weeks passed. War intensified in the north. Wei Wuxian worked day and night. He never showed fatigue in court. Never showed worry. Every night, he stood by the northern balcony, looking at distant mountains. Not emotional. Just calculating. Distance. Weather. Supply timing. He knew Lan Wangji would win. Because Lan Wangji did not gamble. He calculated. Like him. One evening, a messenger arrived breathless. Victory at the river pass. Court erupted. The emperor crushed the main force. Wei Wuxian closed his eyes briefly. Good. Right on schedule. But the messenger added. However, the enemy's final division is retreating toward the mountain cliffs. Wei Wuxian's eyes sharpened. Mountain cliffs. Narrow paths. Ambush territory. He immediately ordered a hawk message sent north. Do not pursue beyond Second Ridge. 3 simple lines. On the battlefield, Lan Wangji received the hawk message. He read it once, then ordered the army to halt pursuit. Minutes later, explosives triggered along the third ridge. The entire cliffside collapsed. Had they advanced? Heavy casualties. The general stared in shock. Your Majesty, the Empress predicted this. Lan Wangji folded the message carefully. Yes. Of course he did. Back in the capital, Wei Wuxian finally allowed himself tea. Usted. No celebration. War wasn't finished yet. But the tide had turned. That night, he stood alone on the balcony, soft wind brushing his robes. He spoke quietly to the northern horizon. Hurry back. Not weak. Not emotional. Just practical. The empire needed its emperor. And he had someone to argue with. Far in the north, Lan Wangji looked at the same moon. Victory secured. Final battle near. He murmured quietly, I am returning. Not to the throne. Not to glory. To him. Chapter 6. The Battle of the Second Ridge. Northern border dawn. Cold winds swept across the mountain ridges. The Northern Coalition's remaining forces had retreated to the cliffs. It looked like desperation. It was not. Lan Wangji stood at the front line in silver armor, eyes calm. He had already read Wei Wuxian's warning. Do not pursue beyond Second Ridge. He never ignored Wei Wuxian's analysis. Never. A general stepped forward. Your Majesty, the enemy appears weak. If we advance now. Lan Wangji raised one hand. The army stopped instantly. Hold position. The general hesitated. But Your Majesty, their formation is too scattered. Silence. Lan Wangji's gaze scanned the cliffs. No visible archers. No cavalry. Too clean. Too empty. Exactly the kind of trap Wei Wuxian would predict. Moment laté. A scout rushed back. Explosive devices found buried beyond the third ridge. The generals froze. If we had advanced. Lan Wangji's voice remained calm. We did not. Because he trusted the one waiting in the capital. Instead of pursuing recklessly, Lan Wangji changed tactics. Divide forces. Cut their retreat from the river. Force them downward. Clean. Precise. Within hours, the coalition army realized they were surrounded from the sides. Panic spread. They tried to trigger their cliff explosives early, but miscalculated timing. Their own retreat path collapsed. Lan Wangji gave the final order. Advance. No chaos. No Reich. Just unstoppable force. By sunset, the Northern Coalition surrendered. The war ended. Capital same evening. Wei Wuxian sat in the strategy hall. He was calculating supply recovery when the doors opened. A messenger knelt. Victory. The Northern Coalition surrendered. The hall erupted in cheers. Wei Wuxian smiled slightly. Casualties. Minimal thanks to halted pursuit. Wei Wuxian nodded. Good. Exactly as expected. 3 days later, the emperor returned. The capital welcomed him with white and gold banners. Citizens bowed deeply as the army entered. Lan Wangji rode at the front. Uninjured. Unshaken. Victorious. Wei Wuxian stood at the palace gates personally. This time, he did not stay on the balcony. He waited at ground level. Their eyes met again. Not for the first time, but different. War completed. Promise kept. Lan Wangji dismounted immediately. Protocol said he should walk slowly. Formally, he did not. He walked directly to Wei Wuxian. You returned. Wei Wuxian said calmly. I said I would. No dramatic embrace. But Lan Wangji's hand briefly touched Wei Wuxian's wrist. Checking. Confirming. Safe. Wei Wuxian smirked. Did you follow my warning? Yes. And it was correct. Wei Wuxian crossed his arms proudly. Of course. A general behind them whispered. They talk like this after war? Another replied quietly. Yes. That's scarier. Victory banquet, night. The palace glowed with celebration. Ministers praised the emperor. Generals toasted success. But attention kept drifting toward the empress. Everyone now knew. The halted pursuit. The trap prediction. The capital defense. Wei Wuxian was no decorative spouse. He was strategic core. One brave minister spoke carefully. Your Majesty, this victory was made possible by both battlefield strength and capital strategy. Lan Wangji answered clearly. Yes. He did not downplay it. He did not avoid it. He acknowledged it openly. The court understood. The emperor and empress were equals. Later, private chamber. Lan Wangji removed his armor slowly. Wei Wuxian watched from the side. No injuries? Minor. Wei Wuxian stepped closer. Show me. Lan Wangji obeyed without question. A small cut on his shoulder. Wei Wuxian cleaned it carefully. You could have avoided this. No. Why? You said when quickly. Wei Wuxian blinked. That doesn't mean get injured. Lan Wangji's voice softened slightly. It is minor. Wei Wuxian finished tying the bandage. You're reckless sometimes. Lan Wangji looked at him calmly. Only when necessary. Pause. And only because I know you can handle the empire. Wei Wuxian looked up. That strange warmth again. Annoying. He hid it with a grin. Next time, take fewer dramatic risks. There will not be a next time. Wei Wuxian raised an eyebrow. No more wars. Lan Wangji's gaze was steady. No one will dare soon. He wasn't boasting. It was fact. Midnight balcony. The empire was quiet again. War ended. Internal factions suppressed. Stability restored. Wei Wuxian leaned against the railing. Lan Wangji stood beside him. You managed the capital well, Lan Wangji said. You managed the battlefield better. Lan Wangji shook his head slightly. We divided it. Wei Wuxian smiled. Yes, we did. A calm silence followed. Then Lan Wangji spoke quietly. The ministers will soon request heirs. Wei Wuxian looked sideways. Already thinking about that? Yes. Direct as always. Wei Wuxian laughed softly. You really plan everything. Yes. And you are my only spouse. The words were simple, but firm, unmovable. Wei Wuxian's smile softened slightly. Well then, Your Majesty. He stepped closer. Let's give them something to talk about. Lan Wangji's hand gently settled at his waist again. Only for him. Always steady. The war was over. But a new chapter was beginning. Peace. Heirs. A louder palace. And perhaps, for small storms running through imperial halls. Chapter 7. A small change. Peace returned to the empire. Trade routes reopened. Northern borders stabilized. Court sessions became less tense. Everything was orderly again. Too orderly. Wei Wuxian noticed something first. He was tired. Not physically weak. Just slower in the mornings. He frowned at his reflection. Strange. He never slowed down. During morning court, a minister presented tax reports. Wei Wuxian listened. Halfway through, the smell of ink suddenly felt overwhelming. He discreetly covered his nose. Lan Wangji notit instanti. His voice did not change, but his hand moved slightly, signaling servants. Windows opened. Fresh air entered. Court continued. No one else understood what happened. But Wei Wuxian did. He glanced at Lan Wangji. Observant. Always. Later in the private chamber, the imperial physician finished checking his pulse, then smiled. Congratulations, Your Majesty. Silence. Wei Wuxian blinked. Lan Wangji stood perfectly still. The physician bowed. The empress is with child. For 3 full seconds, the ice emperor did not react. Then he asked calmly. Condition. Healthy. Stability. Very good. Only after hearing that did Lan Wangji nod. Reward the physician. He dismissed everyone. The door closed. Silence filled the room. Wei Wuxian crossed his arms. Well. Lan Wangji stipet golosalao. You are comfortable? Yes. No disinis. Only slight. Lan Wangji placed a hand gently over Wei Wuxian's abdomen. Careful. As if touching something fragile. Wei Wuxian raised an eyebrow. You look more nervous than during war. Lan Wangji answer honestly. Yes. Wei Wuxian laughed softly. News spread through the palace quickly. The empire celebrated. Firecrackers lit the outer city. Ministers beamed proudly. An air. Stability secured. But inside the palace, Lan Wangji became different. Still cold in court. Still precise. But he walked slower beside Wei Wuxian. He personally tasted food before him. He cancelled 3 unnecessary banquets. He moved heavy documents away from his desk. Wei Wuxian noticed. You're hovering. Yes. I'm not fragile. I know. Then, Lan Wangji looked at him steadily. You are carrying my child. Direct. Wei Wuxian smirked. And you are priority. No hesitación. No embarrassment. Just truth. One afternoon, Wei Wuxian insisted on attending military review. Lan Wangji stood beside him the entire time. A general whispered quietly, His Majesty watches the Empress more than the troops. Another replied, Wise decision. As months passed, Wei Wuxian did not stop working. He redesigned grain storage, improved irrigation channels, reviewed academy curriculum for future officials. Lan Wangji did not stop him. He simply adjusted schedules. Shorter meetings. More rest periods. More tea breaks. Without making it obvious. Wei Wuxian noticed anyway. You moved my afternoon meeting. Yes. Why? You were tired. Wei Wuxian narrowed his eyes. You're monitoring me. Yes. He didn't even deny it. Wei Wuxian laughed. Fine. I'll allow it. 6th month. The first strong kick. Wei Wuxian froze mid-sentence. Lan Wangji stood immediately. What? Wei Wuxian grabbed his wrist and placed his hand over his stomach. Wait. Another small movement. Lan Wangji went completely still. His usually calm eyes widened slightly. A small kick again. He didn't speak for a long time. Wei Wuxian watched him. Well. Lan Wangji's voice lowered. Strong. Wei Wuxian grinned. Of course. Ours. Lan Wangji's hand remained there a little longer. Not wanting to move. 8th month. The entire palace tightened security again. Not because of war, but because heirs invited danger. Lan Wangji personally reviewed guard rotations. No risks. No openings. Anyone who even whispered about succession politics was silenced immediately. The message was clear. The Empress and child were untouchable. One quiet night, Wei Wuxian leaned against Lan Wangji on the balcony. Heavier now, but still confident. Do you prefer a son or daughter? He asked. Lan Wangji answered instantly. Healthy. Wei Wuxian smiled. Good answer. Pause. If it's a son, he will learn responsibility. If it's a daughter, she will learn strategy. Wei Wuxian laughed softly. Balanced. Lan Wangji looked down at him. You will teach them creativity. Wei Wuxian raised an eyebrow. And you? Discipline. Wei Wuxian nodded approvingly. Good combination. The empire waited. The palace prepared. And the Ice Emperor, who once terrified entire kingdoms, now gently adjusted pillows at night, ensured room temperature was perfect, and listened for the faint rhythm of 2 heartbeats instead of 1. The storm of war had passed, but a new small storm was about to arrive, and this one would rule their hearts completely. Chapter 8. The First Cry. The night was quiet. Too quiet. Snow fell lightly over the capital, covering rooftops in white. Inside the Empress Palace, Wei Wuxian was not sleeping. He stood near the window, one hand resting on his stomach. Something felt different. Not pain. Not yet. Just pressure. A shift. Lan Wangji woke instantly. He didn't ask how. He simply knew. You are uncomfortable. Wei Wuxian exhaled slowly. Maybe. Another tightening sensation. Stronger this time. Lan Wangji was already on his feet. Physician. The command was calm, but the speed of the guards told another story. Within minutes, the chamber filled with quiet efficiency. Physicians. Midwives. Warm water. Clean cloth. Lan Wangji did not leave. Protocol suggested the emperor wait outside. He ignored it. He stood beside Wei Wuxian. Silent. Steady. Hours passed. Wei Wuxian did not scream. He did not panic. He focused. Breathing steady. Mind sharp. Lan Wangji held his hand the entire time. Firm. Warm. When pain intensified, Wei Wuxian squeezed harder. Lan Wangji did not react. Not even when his knuckles turned pale. Still calm. Wei Wuxian muttered between breaths. Yes. Liar. A faint pause. Only slightly concerned. Wei Wuxian almost laughed. Almost. Outside, the entire palace remained awake. Ministers paced. Generals stood guard. No one dared leave. An heir was being born. The future of the empire. Inside, time blurred. Then, a cry. Clear. Strong. Loud. The sound cut through the chamber like a bell. Everything stopped. The midwife smiled widely. A healthy alpha prince. Silence. Then soft movement. The baby was wrapped carefully and presented forward. Lan Wangji did not move at first. His eyes were on Wei Wuxian. You are stable? He asked immediately. Wei Wuxian, exhausted but smiling faintly, nodded. Of course. Only then did Lan Wangji step forward. He held the child carefully, as if holding glass. The baby cried loudly again. Strong lungs. Strong heartbeat. Lan Wangji looked down at him. Then very slightly, his expression changed. Not a smile, but softer. Wei Wuxian noticed. Cold emperor defeated by tiny human. Lan Wanzi ziplit guili. He is loud. Wei Wuxian smirked. He takes after me. Morning. The capital erupted in celebration. Cannons fired in announcement. Golden banners hung across the city. The first prince of Gusu was born. Healthy. Strong. Alpha. The ministers bowed deeply during court. Lan Wangji stood with the newborn in his arms. But when congratulated, he corrected calmly. The empress did well. Simple acknowledgement. Public respect. No hesitation. The court understood again. He never separated his success from Wei Wuxian. Later, private chamber. The baby slept beside Wei Wuxian. Lan Wangji sat nearby, watching. Wei Wuxian glanced at him. You've been staring for an hour. Yes. Why? Ensuring he breathes properly. Wei Wuxian laughed softly. He's fine. Lan Wanzi not dead, but did not stop watching. Days passed. The prince was calm, observant, strangely quiet when Lan Wangji held him. Very noisy when Wei Wuxian spoke loudly. Wei Wuxian studied him carefully. Look at his eyes. Lan Wangji looked closer. Clear. Focused. Sharp, Lan Wangji said. Wei Wuxian smiled proudly. He'll be dangerous. Yes. They both seemed satisfied with that. One evening, a senior minister cautiously suggested holding a secondary marriage for political stability. The court fell silent instantly. Lan Wangji's voice dropped cold. There will be no second marriage. The minister stammered. But for future alliances. The alliance is secure. His tone did not rise. It simply ended the discussion. Everyone understood. There was only one empress. Only one Omega. Only one partner. That night, Wei Wuxian held their son while Lan Wangji adjusted blankets again. You're overprotective. Yes. Wei Wuxian smiled softly. I like it. Lan Wangji looked at him. You should rest more. Wei Wuxian tilted his head. You handled war. You handle the empire. Wei Wuxian replied calmly. And now we handle him. Lan Wanzi not dead? Yes. Shared responsibility. Always equal. Snow continued falling outside. Inside the imperial chamber, 3 steady heartbeats filled the quiet room. The empire had its air. But more importantly, the Ice Emperor had something even stronger than power. A family. And this was only the beginning. Chapter 9. The Crown Prince of Snow. The palace had changed. It was louder. Not chaotic. Just alive. The first prince of Gusu was 3 months old. And already ruling the inner palace. Morning court. Lan Wangji sat on the dragon throne. Expression cold as ever. A minister was trembling while reporting delayed tax shipments. The emperor's voice was calm. Resolve it within 3 days. Yes, your majesty. No softness. No merci. The ice emperor remained unchanged. But the moment court ended, Lan Wangji stood immediately. Without lingering. Without extra discussion. He walked straight toward the inner palace. The ministers watched in silence. One whispered quietly, "He walks faster after court these days." Another replied, "Of course. The crown prince is waiting." Inside the empress palace, Wei Wuxian was sitting by the window, holding their son. The baby was wide awake, watching everything, observing. Wei Wuxian noticed first. He doesn't cry much. Lan Wanzi stipet galo. He watches. The baby's eyes followed Lan Wangji immediately. Silent. Focused. Lan Wangji extended one finger. The baby grabbed it. Firm grip. Strong. Lan Wangji went completely still. Wei Wuxian smirked. Congratulations. You've been captured. Lan Wanzi ziplitsesiosili. He has strength. Wei Wuxian laughed. He's 3 months old. Lan Wangji sat beside them. The baby stopped fussing instantly. Wei Wuxian narrowed his eyes. He prefers you. Lan Wangji blinked once. No. Yes. The baby yawned and fell asleep in Lan Wangji's arms. Wei Wuxian stared. Traitor. Lan Wangji almost smiled. Almost. Weeks passed. Lan Wangji developed a routine. Court at dawn. Military review at noon. Family time before evening reports. Personal inspection of the prince's chamber at night. He checked. Window security. Guard rotation. Food preparation. Even toy materials. One nursemaid once whispered, "His Majesty inspects wooden toys personally." Wei Wuxian overheard. "You're scaring the staff." Lan Wanzi answerkan li. They should be careful. Wei Wuxian shook his head. Paranoid. Lan Wangji corrected him. Prepared. One afternoon, Wei Wuxian placed the baby on a soft mat. The prince rolled slightly, trying to move. Lan Wangji immediately leaned forward. He may fall. Wei Wuxian raised an eyebrow. He's on the floor. Lan Wanzi pauset. Still. Wei Wuxian laughed. The mighty emperor defeated by rolling baby. Lan Wangji did not deny it. At 6 months, the prince tried standing. Failed. Fell backward gently onto cushions. Lan Wangji was already halfway across the room. Wei Wuxian caught his sleeve. Stop. Lan Wanzi foza. He must learn balance, Wei Wuxian said calmly. Lan Wanzi wachet gafe. The prince tried again. And again. On the 5th attempt, he stood for 3 full seconds. Lan Wangji's expression softened visibly. Stable, he said quietly. Wei Wuxian smiled proudly. Of course. Meanwhile, court ministers began discussing succession formally. The crown prince shows strong alpha presence. He resembles his majesty. Lan Wangji responded simply. He resembles his parents. Clear. Equal credit. One evening, Wei Wuxian noticed something unusual. The prince reacted to music. When court musicians practiced nearby, the baby turned toward the sound immediately. Focused. Wei Wuxian raised an eyebrow. Interesting. Lan Wanzi wachet gafe. You noticed? Yes. Wei Wuxian smiled slowly. He recognizes rhythm patterns. Lan Wanzi not dead? Intelligent. Wei Wuxian looked pleased. Good. He'll need it. Later that night, the prince finally fell asleep between them. Wei Wuxian lay on one side, Lan Wangji on the other. The baby's small hand rested on Lan Wangji's sleeve. Lan Wangji did not move. Even when his arm went slightly numb, Wei Wuxian noticed. You can move. Lan Wangji shook his head slightly. He is comfortable. Wei Wuxian watched him quietly. You're very different from the battlefield version. Lan Wangji looked at him calmly. Both are me. Wei Wuxian smiled faintly. I know. Outside, the empire was stable. Enemies quiet. Borders secured. Inside, the palace halls echoed with tiny footsteps learning to walk. And occasionally, Lan Wangji could be seen walking slowly behind a wobbling little prince. Hands slightly raised. Ready to catch. Always ready. One afternoon, the prince finally took 3 full steps alone. straight toward Wei Wuxian. Wei Wuxian clapped lightly. Well done. Lan Wangji observed carefully. Good center balance. Wei Wuxian laughed. You analyze your own child like a military formation. Lan Wanzi answer can li. Strategy applies everywhere. Wei Wuxian shook his head. You're hopeless. But he looked pleased. That night, Wei Wuxian leaned against Lan Wangji. The empire has its heir. Yes. You satisfied? Yes. Pause. Not completely. Wei Wuxian blinked. Oh. Lan Wangji looked at him steadily. He should not grow alone. Wei Wuxian stared for a second, then slowly smiled. Your Majesty, you plan everything. Yes. Wei Wuxian leaned closer. For children, perhaps? Lan Wangji did not hesitate. Yes. Wei Wuxian laughed softly. Ambitious. Lan Wangji's hand settled gently at his waist again. Efficient. The crown prince slept peacefully, unaware that 3 more small storms would eventually join him. The empire stood strong. The family grew stronger. And the Ice Emperor remained cold to the world. Soft only for 2 people. Soon to be more. Chapter 10, The Second Heir. The empire entered its most peaceful spring in years, which meant trouble would definitely appear. Just not the dangerous kind. Wei Wuxian realized first. He was sitting in the study, reviewing trade documents from the southern ports. Numbers blurred slightly. Unusual. He never misread numbers. He put the scroll down, paused, then calmly calculated backward. Dates. Cycles. Timing. He blinked once. Efficient indeed. That evening, Lan Wangji returned from reviewing military drills. He immediately noticed something. Wei Wuxian was eating sour plums. Voluntarily, Lan Wangji sat beside him. You dislike sour food? Wei Wuxian nodded. Yes. Silence. Lan Wangji's eyes lowered slightly. Are you unwell? Wei Wuxian leaned back lazily. Not unwell. Pause. Productive. Lan Wangji went completely still. Productive. Wei Wuxian handed him a small medical report scroll. Lan Wangji read it. Once. Twice. His expression did not change. But his grip tightened slightly. Confirmed? Wei Wuxian nodded. Yes. Silence. Then, Lan Wangji stood up. Wei Wuxian blinked. Where are you going? Lan Wangji walked toward the door. To issue orders. Within 1 hour, the entire inner palace was adjusted. Increased guard rotations. Double food inspection. Personal physician assigned permanently. Removal of any sharp furniture edges. A garden walking paths rechecked. Wei Wuxian watched in amusement. You're acting like I'm made of glass. Lan Wanzi Zponde can li. You are not. Pause. You are carrying the empire. Wei Wuxian stared. Then coughed lightly. Flattery doesn't suit you. It is fact. The crown prince was now 1 year old. Walking. Unstable. But determined. He walked directly into Lan Wangji's leg that evening. Lan Wangji immediately picked him up. The child stared at him, then turned his attention to Wei Wuxian's stomach. Tilted his head. Wei Wuxian raised an eyebrow. He senses it. Lan Wangji nodded slightly. Instinct. The prince gently placed his small hand on Wei Wuxian's robe. Serious. Protective. Wei Wuxian melted slightly. Already responsible. Lan Wanzi có rất sốc tí. Like his father. Wei Wuxian smirked. Which one? Lan Wangji did not answer. Weeks passed. Wei Wuxian remained active. Still reading reports. Still advising on border strategy. Still correcting ministers' economic proposals. One minister once whispered nervously, His Highness the Empress is scarier than His Majesty. Another replied, At least His Majesty ends discussions quickly. Wei Wuxian heard. He smiled sweetly. They sweated. Lan Wangji adjusted his schedule again. He refused long-distance campaigns. Generals protested. The northern rebels are reorganizing. Lan Wanzi ziplit can li. Deploy generalnie. But I will not leave the capital. Clear. Final. The generals understood. The emperor's priority had shifted. One evening, Wei Wuxian found Lan Wangji reorganizing scrolls in the nursery. Why are you here?
Lan Wangji zip lít.
Planning. Wei Wuxian peeked. It was a layout diagram. 2 cribs. Adjusted distance from windows. Guard station placement. Emergency exit routes. Wei Wuxian blinked. You prepared this already? Yes. Wei Wuxian crossed his arms. You really want 4 children, don't you? Lan Wangji looked at him calmly. Yes. Wei Wuxian sighed dramatically. My poor body. Lan Wangji's hand gently held his. I will compensate. Wei Wuxian grinned. How?
Lan Wangji bầu xét.
In all ways. Wei Wuxian burst out laughing. The cold emperor says bold things now. At 5 months, Wei Wuxian's presence grew stronger. Court officials could feel the powerful Omega aura even through palace halls. It was steady, confident, not fragile. Lan Wangji personally attended every medical check. Every time, without fail. The physician once trembled slightly. Your Majesty, everything is stable.
Lan Wangji not dead.
Continue. Wei Wuxian leaned back. You terrify him.
Lan Wangji zip lít.
Interrogation first. Wei Wuxian nodded. Good. Later, they discovered it was bribery from a minor noble faction. Testing palace defenses. Lan Wangji removed the noble title the next morning. Swift. Efficient. Noblesse. Wei Wuxian approved. Mercy with warning.
Lan Wangji not dead.
Unnecessary noise is inefficient. Wei Wuxian smiled. I married a strategist. Yes. You're proud? Yes. The crown prince began talking simple words. Muqin. Mother. Fu. Father. He said Fu more often. Wei Wuxian narrowed his eyes. Biased child.
Lan Wangji can li zip lít.
He respects authority. Wei Wuxian threw a pillow at him. The prince laughed. Winter approached. The second child was due soon. Lan Wangji reduced court hours again. Ministers had already accepted reality. The empire functioned smoothly regardless. Because Wei Wuxian had already structured governance systems months ago. Efficiency. Long-term planning. No chaos. One quiet snowy night, Wei Wuxian's contractions began. He remained calm. Timing is acceptable, he commented. Lan Wangji was already beside him. Hands steady. Eyes sharp. The palace locked down instantly. Hours passed. Snow fell outside the palace roof. And before dawn, a cry echoed through the chamber. Strong. Loud. Very loud. Lan Wangji held the newborn carefully. Powerful lungs. Wei Wuxian exhaled tiredly. Second one sounds dramatic. The physician bowed. Healthy princess. Silence. Lan Wangji looked at Wei Wuxian. Wei Wuxian smiled softly. A daughter. Lan Wangji's expression softened completely. Perfect. The crown prince was brought carefully to the doorway. He stared at his sister. Serious. Then nodded once. Approval. Wei Wuxian laughed weakly. He accepts her. Lan Wangji looked down at both children. Then at Wei Wuxian. 3 more. Wei Wuxian closed his eyes. You are relentless. Yes. Outside, snow covered the empire peacefully. Inside, the Ice Emperor held his newborn daughter. Careful. Precise. As if holding the most fragile treasure in the world. Because he was. Chapter 11. The Little Princess Problem. The empire learned something important that year. The crown prince was calm. The princess was not. From the moment she could sit. She refused to sit quietly. From the moment she could crawl. She moved at alarming speed. From the moment she could stand. The entire palace staff lost peace. Wei Wuxian watched thoughtfully as his daughter escaped from her nurse again. She has excellent lower body coordination. The nurse collapsed to her knees. Your Highness, she climbed the tea table. Lan Wangji's eyes lowered slightly. Climbed. Yes, Your Majesty. Lan Wangji turned toward the princess. She was standing proudly on a cushion. Unstable. Smiling. Victorious. Lan Wangji walked forward calmly. She did not retreat. Instead, she raised both arms, demanding to be picked up. Lan Wangji lifted her. She immediately grabbed his hair ribbon. Firm. Strong. Wei Wuxian laughed. She fears nothing.
Lan Wanzi zip lit Li.
She resembles you. Wei Wuxian smirked. I was well behaved. Silence. Lan Wangji did not comment. The crown prince, now 2 years old, observed his sister like a small scholar studying chaos theory. She ran. He followed slowly. She climbed. He calculated risk. She fell onto cushions. He sighed deeply. Wei Wuxian watched them both. Our son looks tired already.
Lan Wanzi not dead?
He has leadership temperament. Wei Wuxian smiled. And she? Lan Wangji glanced at the princess, who was currently attempting to open a cabinet. Expansion strategy. Wei Wuxian burst into laughter. One afternoon, the princess escaped again. This time, toward the outer garden, directly past 2 guards. They froze. Because technically, no one knew how to stop a tiny royal hurricane politely. Lan Wangji arrived just in time to see her chasing a butterfly. She tripped. Lan Wangji moved instantly, caught her mid-fall. She blinked up at him, then laughed, as if it was a game. Lan Wangji stared at her. Reckless. Wei Wuxian joined them. No. He looked at his daughter carefully. Confident. Lan Wangji considered that. Yes. At court, ministers began whispering again. The princess shows strong alpha traits. She intimidates the servants. Lan Wangji responded simply. She is imperial. Discussion ended. Meanwhile, Wei Wuxian discovered something interesting. The princess had unusual memory retention. At barely 1 year, she remembered room layouts, guard shifts, even which servant carried sweets. One day, she walked directly to the hidden storage where dessert pastries were kept. Without hesitation, Wei Wuxian narrowed his eyes. Who taught you espionage?
Lan Wanzi zip lit Li.
No one. Pause. She learned by observation. Wei Wuxian stared at his daughter. Dangerous. Lan Wangji's lips moved almost imperceptibly. Promising. At night, the crown prince slept quietly. The princess did not. She refused to sleep unless held. Specifically, held by Lan Wangji. Wei Wuxian crossed his arms. Favoritism. Lan Wangji, holding the drowsy princess against his chest, replied. She grips tightly. As if that explained everything. Wei Wuxian leaned closer. She manipulates you.
Lan Wanzi answer Li.
She is strategic. Wei Wuxian laughed softly. You're helpless. Lan Wangji did not deny it. One evening, a minor palace noble attempted to approach the children during garden hour. Claiming innocent admiration, Lan Wangji noticed immediately. His presence shifted. Cold. Heavy. The noble paled. Wei Wuxian stepped forward casually. You seem interested in imperial children. The noble stammered. And no ill intent.
Lan Wanzi spoke.
Remove him. 2 guards escorted the noble out instantly. Later investigation revealed. The noble had been asking questions about succession influence. Lan Wangji reassigned him to border administration. Far. Very far. Wei Wuxian approved. Efficient exile.
Lan Wanzi not dead?
Minimal disturbance. Winter returned again. The princess was now almost 2. The crown prince 3. They moved together now. He guided. She executed. One day, they reorganized the chess pieces in Lan Wangji's study. Perfect formation. Wei Wuxian stared at the board. They created a flanking structure. Lan Wangji examined it. With bait. Wei Wuxian looked toward the children. They were sitting innocently.
Lan Wanzi spoke Li.
Genius. Wei Wuxian corrected. Our children. Lan Wangji glanced at him softly. Yes. That night, Wei Wuxian leaned against Lan Wangji. 2 already. Yes. They grow fast. Yes. Pause. You still want 4? Lan Wangji answered without hesitation. Yes. Wei Wuxian tilted his head. You plan the empire long-term? Yes. And our family? Yes. Wei Wuxian smiled slowly. Then perhaps one more soon? Lan Wangji's eyes shifted slightly. Soon. Wei Wuxian leaned closer. Efficient. Lan Wangji's hand rested gently at his waist. Agreed. Outside, the empire prospered. Trade routes expanded. Borders secured. Inside, the Ice Emperor carried his fearless daughter on one arm, his steady son walking beside him, his Omega strategist at his side. The palace had changed. It was no longer silent. It echoed with laughter, footsteps, tiny arguments, strategic toy placement, and occasionally, Lan Wangji walking slowly behind two running children. Hands ready. Always ready.
Chapter 13 war Declaration.
Peace never lasts forever. The Western Coalition finally moved. 3 kingdoms formed alliance. Border cities attacked at dawn. Lan Wangji read the emergency report. His expression did not change. Mobilize. The court trembled. Wei Wuxian stood beside him calmly. 3 kingdoms. Overconfident.
Lan Wangji not dead?
They believe I will not leave the capital. Wei Wuxian's lips curved slightly. Will you? Silence. Then. Yes. The ministers froze. The crown prince stepped forward unexpectedly. Fu Going. Lan Wangji knelt slightly to his son's height. Yes. The princess frowned. Ego Kropka.
Lan Wangji zip lit gan li.
No. Wei Wuxian watched quietly, then spoke softly. When quickly. Lan Wangji looked at him. I will. Chapter 14. The Emperor leaves. Departure day. Snow falling lightly. Lan Wangji in full battle armor. Silver and white. Cold. Untouchable. Except. He bent down and kissed Wei Wuxian's forehead. Soft. Brief. Only for him. Guard the capital. Wei Wuxian smiled calmly. Always. The princess grabbed Lan Wangji's sleeve. Bring horse.
Lan Wangji not dead?
Yes. The crown prince stood straight. I protect Muqin. Lan Wangji placed a hand on his shoulder. Good. And then, the emperor left for war. Cherry Blossom Chapter 15 Hidden Blade. The capital remained stable, because Wei Wuxian was there. Ministers tried minor power plays. He dismantled them politely. Trade manipulation attempt? Blocked. Noble faction testing military supply? Exposed. Then, an assassination attempt during a lantern festival. Target, the princess. The blade never reached her. Wei Wuxian moved first. Elegant. Precise. The assassin was disarmed within seconds. The crown prince had already pulled his sister back. Coordination. Instinct. Guards finished the capture. Wei Wuxian's smile was calm. Interrogate. The children looked at him. The princess blinked. Muqin scary. Wei Wuxian laughed lightly. Only to enemies. Chapter 16. Battlefield Emperor. Meanwhile, Lan Wangji destroyed the Western Coalition. Efficiently. Norekles Bladsingth. He broke supply chains first. Then cut communication routes. 3 allied armies collapsed within 2 months. Final battle. Lan Wangji led the charge personally. Cold. Precise. Untouchable. Enemy generals surrendered. War ended faster than expected. A messenger galloped back to the capital. Victory. Chapter 17 Reunion. Lan Wangji returned in early spring. The gates opened. The princess ran first. Horse? Lan Wangji dismounted and lifted her. Yes. The crown prince bowed formally, then hugged him anyway. Wei Wuxian stood at the top of the steps. Composed. Lan Wangji walked up. Stopped before him. You handled everything. Wei Wuxian nodded. As expected. Lan Wangji leaned closer slightly. I missed you. Wei Wuxian smiled softly. I know. Cherry Blossom Chapter 18 Third and Fourth. Peace returned again. Months later, Wei Wuxian calmly announced at breakfast. Productive. Lan Wangji paused mid-tea. Again. The princess clapped. Baby. The crown prince nodded seriously. More guards.
Lan Wangji ziplit?
Yes. The third child. Another son. Quiet. Sharp eyes. Observant like the eldest. 1 year later. The fourth. Another daughter. But this one. Calm. Smiling. Deceptively gentle. Wei Wuxian leaned back one evening. 4.
Lan Wan Zi not dead?
Complete. Cherry Blossom Chapter 19. The Four Heirs. Years passed. The Crown Prince. Strategic. Responsible. Balanced. The First Princess. Bold. Fearless. Politically sharp. The Second Prince. Silent genius. Tactical mind. The Youngest Princess. Sweet smile. Dangerous intuition. The empire flourished under Lan Wangji's rule. But increasingly, Wei Wuxian shaped its systems, education reform, military intelligence structure, trade network expansion. Their partnership was seamless. One night, all four children sat around a strategy board, arguing about defense formations. Lan Wangji observed. Wei Wuxian smirked. Our legacy.
Lan Wan Zi not dead?
Yes.
Chapter 20, Éternelle Alliance.
10 years later, the empire stood unmatched. The Western kingdoms signed permanent peace. No rebellion. No instability. Lan Wangji stood on the palace balcony. Wei Wuxian beside him. Children training in the courtyard below. You never remarried. Wei Wuxian teased lightly. Lan Wangji glanced at him. There was never reason. Wei Wuxian smiled. Good answer. Lan Wangji took his hand openly now. No need to hide. You are my only. Wei Wuxian leaned against him. You're still cold. Yes. Still efficient. Yes. Still mine. Lan Wangji looked at him fully. Always. Below. The crown prince gave orders. The first princess argued loudly. The second prince corrected both. The youngest princess smiled innocently while secretly moving pieces on the board. Lan Wangji watched them. Then looked at Wei Wuxian. Successful strategy. Wei Wuxian laughed softly. The best one. The empire thrived. The Ice Emperor remained cold to the world. But in the palace, he was simply husband, simply father, and eternally loyal to the only Omega he ever chose.